Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. Alexander Usyk will face Daniel Dubois in Wrocław in Poland. A massive fight this weekend for the unified heavyweight championship of the world. Let's get technical. Let's come up with a prediction as well. Talk about some of the keys to victory. You know, it's going to be difficult not to over talk here because there are so many elements that are so important. So I'm going to try and limit it to some key areas. You know, when it comes to Alexander Usyk, there's a method in which he operates which is very, very difficult to deal with. This is a master. He's an all-time great. There's no doubt about it. He operates at such a high level of ring IQ that he's always pulling the strings. In many ways, he's much like Vasyl Lomachenko. And the modus operandi that they have is also very similar. You see, when you look at the individual punches of Alexander Usyk, there aren't that many there that you consider to be elite as an individual shot. For instance, who do you think's got the more destructive, dominant jab? Alexander Usyk or Daniel Dubois? How about the right hand? Who's got the more destructive hooking? Alexander Usyk's hooking's a bit slappy. He doesn't turn over the knuckles. He's very fast. He's very sneaky with all of these shots. The backhand, the jab, the hooking, it's all sneaky. It's all very clever. But how destructive is he with them? How consistently damaging is he with those shots? You see, where he stands out is the ring IQ, the intellect, the chess playing, the agility, the foot speed, the fantastic consistent level change and head movement. He makes himself an evasive target. In other words, whilst Dubois' jab might be more destructive than Alexander Usyk's, when you compare lead hand to lead hand, it's incomparable. The lead hand of Alexander Usyk is so educated that he's able to dictate a fight just with the lead hand. He will put it in your face and he'll affect your eyesight. He'll change the level of it. He's threatening to come in with it. He will often come around the guard, or he'll slip inside, something that southpaws are told not to do. He'll slip inside and come inside the guard with a straight shot, a straight jab, a lead hand. He keeps you guessing. And he's changing the levels, like I said. And if you don't react to the foot feint, the hand feint, the shoulder feints, all the little feints that he does, where he's just inside the zone, so you know that he can reach you. If you're going to say, listen, he's feinting, so I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to let go of the shots on my terms, he's going to punch you straight in the mouth. And Anthony Joshua felt that in the very first round, very first few seconds of their first fight. And it's enough of a pop on there to make you think, whoa, I don't want to get hit like that again. Now, when you start to react to feints because you realize there's enough pop there to affect me, I need to then impose my will on him. I'm the bigger man, right? He's just a small cruiserweight. Let me get at this guy. So what happens is, because his feet are so quick, when he exits the pocket and resets, he'll take half a step back and then step to his own right and curl outside. When you then reach and you're overreaching, it's like trying to punch a target that's moving away from you and you're constantly overreaching. It requires a massive effort. And if you throw punches and you're missing, or you're not landing flush, you're not punching through the target, it's more tiring. One of the reasons, in my opinion, that Vasyl Lomachenko always feels that he's hard done by the judges is because, from a perspective of ring generalship, Loma's always in control. Early in a fight, what Loma will tend to do is step out of the pocket, and you've got something to aim at, right? He'll have that high guard and you've got something to aim at, which is usually the solar plexus, the body. But because he's stepping out and you're trying to punch through the target, when you're hitting him and he's stepping away, he's taking something off of the shot. So to him, it's not a clean and effective shot. Your glove might be touching, but it's not affecting him. They're not landing flush. So in his mind, I'm stepping out here. I'm dictating. I'm making this guy exert all this energy. He's not really punching through the target. And then later on, they're telling me he's outworking me. When he threw 5 or 6 of those punches, they barely landed. I threw 2 or 3 and I landed clean, flush and effective. I'm the one dictating. I'm the ring general. But here's the thing. When it comes to Loma, on his exit point, he'll often walk out. So one foot will go behind the other. There's a shift. With Usyk, it doesn't quite work like that. He will come back and take a little hop step back and then step to the right and then exit from there. With Loma, it's more lineal. But regardless of how they exit, there's an area that they both share. And that is that neither one of them actually punches off of the back foot. Not really. What they tend to do is get out of the pocket, make you overreach, and when you've lost your balance, they'll come back in. Or alternatively, when they're out of danger, they'll come back in. So as they exit, they require a slight reset before they come back in. So what can happen is, if you're putting incessant pressure early on, it takes away their activity. They're not punching. So even though they might take away any real offensive arsenal you have, because they can be so inactive, they can get outworked. But in order to force them to be inactive, it requires, like I said, such a high energy output, it's impossible to sustain. Usain Bolt can't sprint in a 5,000 meter race. After 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, he's going to start to get tired and he will have to slow. And as somebody like Chisora starts to slow, when he's putting it on Usyk, first couple of rounds, Usyk's very uncomfortable. He doesn't have the time to reset on his exit. And as he's trying to exit, because Chisora's got this big wide hook in, he's cutting off the trajectory of that exit. So you're moving into those shots. You're trying to come underneath them. He's bundling you. But when that starts to slow, as you step out and he falls short, your feet are below you and you've got that opportunity to come straight back in. And by coming straight back in, you're able to then start to punish him for falling short. And one of the things I always said about Anthony Joshua, when people were saying he's too big for Alexander Usyk ahead of the first fight, and even ahead of the second fight, a lot of people were saying, AJ's going to be a lot more aggressive. I kept telling people, listen, AJ has an issue with his gas tank. He cannot come out there and fight like that for 12 rounds. He's going to gas. And if he tries to do that early on, he will get stopped. He cannot sustain that. Well, Daniel Dubois has got a bit of a better gas tank than Anthony Joshua, but he's still a very big, physically imposing, muscular man whose muscles will fill up with lactic acid if he tries to apply incessant pressure from the first bell until the final bell. It's very difficult against a faster guy who will be punishing you for every error to do that. And so one of the areas that I've always pointed to when it comes to Alexander Usyk, in my opinion, is that you have to mix up pressure with luring him onto a shot. You have to make him guess what your entry point is going to be as well. And he can actually be lured onto a shot. If you watch the Bellew fight, for instance, you'll see that Bellew turned off at the shoulder. He knows that Usyk likes to step to the side, right? Come over the back of your shoulder and get behind you, essentially. So he would often walk across the ropes. He's cutting off the entry to the exit to the side. And I'm turning the shoulder. So for you to come in, you have to come in through the straight line. And from there, I'm going to roll with a shot and come back with a right hand. And he had some success early on. As Usyk started to spot this, he started to feint a little bit. He actually narrowed the entry line even more at that point, making Bellew try to rotate even further with the right hand, which gave Usyk more time to read it and then come in after that because of that high level ring IQ. But the point is, there are moments where Alexander Usyk, as he's feinting, changing those levels, when he seeks to step in, sometimes you'll see quite a heavy step on that lead foot, just as he's about to step in. If you can time that, you can lure him onto a straight right hand. And whilst you have the likes of Tony Bellew, who, listen, was a decent puncher with his right hand at cruiserweight, big left hook, we're talking about Daniel Dubois, who's a big puncher as a heavyweight. It's a different type of power. If you can get it right just once, potentially, I mean, I'm not saying all you need is one punch, but potentially you can get it right with one big shot, you could potentially hurt Alexander Usyk. But you need to mix that up with applying the right kind of pressure. And you have to target the body. And one of the things, like I said, when it comes to Loma and Usyk, they will protect their heads very well, dip forward, and they'll leave a little bit of a gap to the solar plexus. Another area to initiate a clinch with Alexander Usyk is to throw a wide left hook, which sort of cups you around the back of the ear. And what it tends to do with that is cover up and bend forward. And that enables you to hook him in and bring him in. And something that Briedis had a lot of success with, and I was saying AJ should have been using a lot. And he used it one or two times in the second fight, but not really. From that position, he tends to crouch even lower and then enter the pocket closer to you to try and smother you. And he tries to protect that chin and that head from both hooks and uppercuts. But that leaves an opening at the bottom of the stomach, the pit of the stomach. And he's always susceptible to that right uppercut to the pit of the stomach. Those sorts of areas are what Dubois is going to need to target. Now, when it comes to Dubois, he's got actually faster feet than people realise. He fights out of a little bit of a bounce and he looks very, very stiff. I can imagine him being shocking on the dance floor because he's got this back which is very stiff, almost like there's a snooker cue running down his spine. When he's going to bend forward, he'll actually bend forward in a straight line, right? So he looks robotic, but his feet are quite good. He'll change the level. He can move on the back foot, as you saw with Lorena, or even after he was injured, or he can hunt you down. But what he tends to do is shoot this very destructive long jab without much of a tell on it. And when he's going to step in, he'll do it suddenly behind that jab and launch in that long right hand. It's more often than not a 1-2. And when he throws that right hand, with that stiff back, he sort of leans forward his weight onto that left foot. And from there, because he's gotten quite low, he'll then shoot a left hook. And it's a rising left hook, almost like a shovel hook. But it's not always coming as a shovel hook, as in diagonally up onto the ribs. Sometimes he'll just come from a low position and throw it sort of horizontally, but as he throws it horizontally, it's sort of around the bicep area. So if you do duck forward, you can get caught on the side of the head. And that's a combination he really likes. Another thing he likes to do is when he's going to get you on the ropes, he'll throw a left hook, left hook, say. So let's say he's exchanging normal hooks. And then from that, he'll whip in an uppercut through the center line. So with his big wide hooks, he's getting you to cover up because he's a powerful man. And you tend to cover up the side of your head to protect the temples and the side of the chin from those hooks. And by creating that opening, he then targets through the middle. And then he'll go back to hooking after that. So if he pins you on a rope, he's actually quite a dangerous guy in the sense that he's able to vary the height trajectory of his very heavy-handed shots. He's not a guy that just carries power in one specific shot, like a long right hand. He carries it with any shot that he throws. The problem is trying to pin Alexander Usyk. So those little left hooks he throws to the body, to the ribs, he's going to have to use that an awful lot. He's going to have to throw the uppercut to the solar plexus, because one of the things that Usyk likes to do, like I said, is cover up, change a lot of head movement, change the levels, and then from there, when you're not expecting it, he'll come with a backhand. He'll even slip inside the guard and come with a jab on the inside of your guard, things that he's not supposed to do, so to speak, from an orthodox perspective. But because he's always shifting forward, the one area that doesn't really move is the pit of the stomach. You're going to have to continually go there with the backhand. And because we know he can change the legs, the height dynamic with the legs, Dubois, shoot a straight right hand into the solar plexus too, or towards the pit of the stomach by dropping your legs down. The problem that he has is that because he has this very tall, upright sort of stance from the waist up, when an opponent will change the level in front of him, often he stays quite tall. Even when his legs come down, he doesn't bend forward. And so when Usyk's going to be coming down, he'll have a lot of opportunities, in my opinion, with up jabs and rising backhands. Those sort of trajectory of an up jab, but even with the backhand coming in that sort of direction there from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. And I think he'll have a lot of success with that. The other thing is, although he's got a bit of a slapping backhand, Alexander Usyk, he doesn't always turn the knuckles over. He's very sneaky with it. So one of the things he did with Anthony Joshua in one sequence, for instance, he's moving his head on the outside of AJ's lead hand. And he's messing around with his lead hand. He's drawing attention. He's drawing AJ's eyes to AJ's own left, okay? So I'm Anthony Joshua, here's Alexander Usyk, and I'm looking at him here, and he's moving here, he's moving here. My sight's there. If he throws a straight backhand from this position, I'm going to see it come through the center line, and I'll be able to react to it. But whilst he's dipping to this side, he threw a wide hooking backhand, which means it's the longest possible trajectory for the punch. It's the furthest point away from him. It's the backhand against the backhand, right? But it's coming wide. I should see that. But because he's drawn my focus away, that misdirection, AJ doesn't see it coming, and it comes around and lands. And it's that sort of thing that Alexander Usyk's able to do. He's always thinking a step ahead. And so what I think is going to potentially happen to Dubois is that he'll come on aggressive early on. And it will take Usyk moments to have to reset and to be able to make Dubois fall short. And he'll have his body targeted. And look out for that uppercut when Usyk's trying to cover up. If he's able to land that left hook to the body, uppercut through to the solar plexus, and potentially if he bends down forward too much and he eats one on the chin, Usyk could potentially be at threat here in the early round. But I just don't think it will necessarily be sustainable for Daniel Dubois. And I think that Alexander Usyk has such a high level of ring IQ, he's going to be able to do what he tends to do to fighters, start to exert mental pressure. And we know there have been some question marks about Daniel Dubois' mentality in the past. He did seem to take that knee against Joe Joyce. And then against Kevin Lerena, he showed an awful lot of grit with a knee injury to come through that fight. He answered a lot of questions that night. But there will be people that will point to the fact that prior to that, he seemed uneasy in the corner, and Shane McGuigan had to really read him the riot act or try to encourage him to stay in the fight and continue to bite down on that gum shield and fight. He needed that guidance. He needed that encouragement. And in front of a hostile crowd, if things are not going his way and he's starting to get a beating and there's this almost procession-like atmosphere surrounding Alexander Usyk, who knows how Daniel Dubois is going to react from a mental perspective. Now, I've got no doubt in my mind that Don Charles will be there egging him on, telling him everything he needs in there. He's got James Ali Bashir as well, who in the past has worked with Alexander Usyk. That's a very wily old character to have in your corner as well. But nonetheless, if things are not going your way on hostile territory like that, and you're starting to get lit up as the fight goes on, is he going to be able to survive that? And for me, ultimately, I just think that tendency for him to stand a little bit too tall and Usyk's ability to change the levels and punch upwards and find angles for big shots, it's just going to start taking its toll on Daniel Dubois. And I think that if Usyk can get out of the first 3 or 4 rounds, which I do think he will be at threat, don't be stunned if something shocking happens early in this fight. But if he does get out of that, I think from the 5th and 6th onwards, you'll start to see Alexander Usyk really put a beating on Dubois. And I think he could potentially stop him in the latter half of the fight as well. But this is not some mismatch that people are pointing it out to be. A lot of people are saying Dubois is rubbish. People always overreact. You know what boxing fans are like. The fact of the matter is, against Joe Joyce, it was a nip and tuck fight before he took the knee. And one last thing that I want to add, and I can't remember which philosopher it was that said this, and I'm paraphrasing here, but there's a phrase which goes something along the lines of, your reputation does not grow until your capabilities begin to decline. And what that essentially means is that when you are at your peak and you're working so hard to achieve the recognition that you deserve, by the time you get to that point where people recognize how good you are at something, it can sometimes take so long that you've just gone a little bit over the hill. And whilst I don't believe that has happened to Oleksandr Usyk, he is a fighter who's reliant on certain athletic attributes that could potentially get old overnight. This is not a George Foreman type of character who's, durable, robust, has a monster punch and can take you out of blunt force trauma, and none of those things age particularly quickly. Okay, they're not those sorts of attributes. When Usyk's reaction times wither, when his foot speed declines, when his stamina starts to go over the hill, you're going to see a fighter that's just not the same anymore. And at 36 years old, at heavyweight, against a more youthful guy who's going to target the body, don't be stunned if there's an upset. It wouldn't mean that Oleksandr Usyk was overrated. It wouldn't mean that AJ's terrible and you made him look good. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means what we always say on this channel, that the only undefeated fighter is Father Time. And he's going in there against a very talented young heavyweight. And sometimes time can catch up with you and another guy can have a style that causes you a problem and the timing is just right. So whilst I'm picking Oleksandr Usyk by late stoppage, just be aware that there is a level of interest here that you should take seriously. Anyway, thank you for watching, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Take care. God bless.